Have you ever noticed how some men just seem to have it all put together? They're incredible husbands, amazing dads, and they're absolutely killing it at work. But it doesn't seem to be related to status or their job, because there's plenty of successful people out there who get all of this wrong and still end up being alone and miserable. Personally, I think a big driving force behind that is service. And in serving both themselves and other people, men can find real fulfillment that can just not be gotten any other way. But when I realised this, it actually left me with one unanswered question, and that is, if you don't serve, can you truly be a man? Okay, before we start talking about service, I want to tell you about how I ended up starting training in a gym. Now, I do promise that it's relevant, so just bear with me here. Back when I was about 16, my mum got me a gift of a gym membership for a hotel down the road, and I absolutely loved it. I ended up training pretty consistently for about 4 or 5 years, but despite that, you really wouldn't know it from looking at me. I didn't make much progress, despite the fact that even now looking back, I'm quite proud of how much effort and energy and dedication I was giving to the process. But you would never know about it. I was still small, I was still weedy, and I wasn't all that strong. This was incredibly frustrating for me at the time, because being that age, a huge reason why I was training was to look bigger and stronger and actually be able to move more weight. The general level of health that I was building didn't really appeal to me, and so I became very, very frustrated very, very quickly. And this materialized into one of the most common problems that young people make when they go to the gym, and that's program hopping. I would pick one program, stick with it for a few weeks, but then when I ended up not looking like I should be on the cover of Flex magazine, I would get frustrated again and just jump to a new program. And what I didn't realize was that it was this program jumping that was actually slowing me down. And I'd love to say that I learned that lesson quite quickly, but after those 4 or 5 years, I got so frustrated that I ended up stopping going to the gym at all. And then when I picked it back up again about 2 years later, I made the exact same mistakes. At this stage, I was in my 20s, I was training even harder, and still, yes, making a little bit of progress and maybe starting to look like I actually exercised, but it really wasn't to the level that I would have expected for all the effort and energy that I was actively putting into this process day after day, week after week, and month after month. It wasn't until my late 20s or early 30s that I actually realised this after signing up for a powerlifting competition. And at that stage, I knew that I needed very specific programming to meet those goals. And so I stopped program hopping. And in the couple of years that I was doing that powerlifting program, I made more progress both in terms of my size, strength, and exercise abilities than I did collectively over the previous years from when I was 16. The reality was that I had made more progress in the last 3 years of my training life than I had in the previous 10. The reason why I'm starting off with this story is oftentimes when people hear service, they think service for other people, but not realizing that that service can also apply to themselves. I think a lot of us would agree that a good man does know that short-term sacrifice for long-term gain is a positive trait to have. And so if you're not somebody who's able to trust the process, can you truly say that you fall into that category? Alright, so I'm just finishing up here for work, and I've pulled in because I've just thought of another really good example of why service is a good trait to have. I want you to imagine that you've got 2 lives. Both of them are absolutely identical, except in both of them you have 2 different bosses. Each of them know their stuff really, really well and are incredibly educated and experienced in whatever industry that you work in. There's absolutely no doubting what either of these bosses have in terms of knowledge and experience, and more often than not, they are completely and utterly right on the money. But being human, from time to time they will get something wrong, and that can even be something as simple as the start time for a meeting. The first of these hypothetical bosses is going to absolutely deny any wrongdoing. They're absolutely adamant that they think that the meeting was supposed to start at this time, and that's it, and there's absolutely no movement that they're willing to accept that says anything different. The other, well, they are open and quick to admit their mistakes and offer apology for the mix-up on their part. Now, this is a very simplistic example, but if you extrapolate that over to working with these bosses for weeks or months or even years, it's not difficult to see which boss you're going to respect more. Initially, this might not seem like service, but it absolutely is, because what they're doing is they're putting their own ego and need to be right aside, all in the interest of leading their team absolutely as best as they can. It's these type of people that we will often say is a really good person. Service doesn't just have to be about spending hours and hours and hours doing grunt work for other people. Sometimes it really is as simple as putting our own emotions aside for a bigger collective goal. Let's talk for a second about mental load. Now, if that's not a term that you've ever heard before, it's essentially the hidden and invisible work that goes into managing a household. I mean, think about it. You've got planning of meals, organizing the shopping, remembering what appointments are taking place when, remembering to send those Christmas cards out, knowing when the last time the house was cleaned, and the list just goes on and on and on. And if it's all falling to one person to remember not only when all those things need to be done, but also how to do them, that's definitely not balanced, and it's definitely not service. And if we again use the analogy of having two different types of people, one who helps with all this stuff and one doesn't, it's not difficult to see that the person who does help is going to be a better husband, wife, and father, and all round just a much better man. This is why real men serve. Service that comes with a huge level of satisfaction, knowing that when your head hits the pillow at the end of the day, you have done everything you can to make your family and your kids' life as best as possible. Throughout this whole video, I've been talking about what it means to be a good man, but I guess a lot of this could probably apply to you women out there too. But I won't lie, me being a man, that didn't really feel right for me to be saying, here's how you be a better woman. At the end of the day, this boils down to knowing the difference between I've done enough and I can do no more. The first is the absolute bare minimum, but if you really truly nail the second and dedicate your life to service, both of yourself and other people, well then you're going to turn yourself into somebody who you can be incredibly proud to be. That's this week's video, folks. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace!